Hey folks, this isn't a paid advertisement, but I feel it important enough to mention to everyone here on my channel. Child trafficking is rampant throughout the world, and especially bad here in America. So to bring awareness to the problem and rescue the children from a life of living hell, I highly recommend everyone go see The Sound of Freedom. You won't be sorry.
Oil, love it or hate it. It's the only game in town to sustain the U.S. economy and ensure the U.S. has sufficient strategic reserves to face any international or domestic emergency. So why have the strategic reserves plummeted to an October 1984 level? Hi folks, and welcome back to the Storm and Cellar. According to an article in Bloomberg, the U.S. strategic reserves are critically low. So we'll take a look at why and what effects it may have on the U.S. as a nation. Hey, if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for future videos. I think it's interesting what's happening with the U.S.'s Strategic Petroleum Reserve, or SPR. So what is the SPR and why is it so important? The SPR, which was established in 1975, consists of a U.S. Department of Energy complex of 4 sites with deep underground storage caverns created in salt domes along the Texas and Louisiana Gulf coasts. It's there as an emergency oil reserve to be used during a domestic crisis such as hurricanes, snowstorms, earthquakes, meteorites, and any other domestic catastrophe that might warrant its use. Although it's also used for emergency military use. Ideally, the strategic oil reserve should remain full at all times. However, presidents have dipped into the SPR numerous times for political and economic reasons. Currently, the U.S. crude oil in the SPR is at a level of 348 million barrels, down 29.52% from last year. Why? Well, President Biden is using it to hopefully curb inflation and gas prices.
Meanwhile, President Biden is set to announce new efforts to combat high gas prices. He's expected to release 15 million more barrels of oil from the Strategic Oil Reserve in December, the last of the 180 million barrels he authorized back in March. This as the IRS announces tax bracket changes aimed at easing the impact of inflation.
Is it working? I'm personally not seeing it. Maybe you folks out there in California are. The presidentially directed emergency releases has occurred only 3 times in the history of the SPR. First was 1991 at the beginning of Operation Desert Storm. The second was in September 2005 after Hurricane Katrina devastated the oil production, distribution, and refining industries in the Gulf regions of Louisiana and Mississippi. And the third time was in June 2011 when the United States and its partners in the IEA, or International Energy Agency, announced the release of 60 million barrels in response to crude oil supply disruptions in Libya and other countries where the U.S. obligation was 30 million barrels, or over half. Just a reminder, the U.S. uses only 20% consumption, but donated over half. As usual, Uncle Sugar always pays more than its fair share. So although Desert Storm required President Bush to dip into the SPR for one of the biggest military events in over 30 years, what would happen if the U.S. needed to go up against China or Russia? Well, it would be pretty interesting because the U.S. has been selling parts of the SPR to China already. In the current national state of affairs, the U.S. has sold off millions of barrels of SPR only to have to buy it back to refill the strategic reserve. Now, let me remind you that the U.S. is the world's largest consumer of oil, using only 21 million barrels per day, and according to U.S. Energy Information Administration, there's an estimated 38.2 billion barrels worth of proven oil reserves that are still untapped. In fact, according to a report from Rystad Energy, they estimate the U.S. is sitting on another 264 billion barrels of oil reserves. America now has more untapped oil than any country on the planet, and enough oil to run the U.S. for another 100 years. But currently, it will take months to buy back enough oil to replenish the SPR.
Biden administration is going to buy 3 million barrels of crude to help refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Last year's record sales drew down the stockpile to its lowest level since 1983.
Since the Russian-Ukrainian war, the U.S. has stopped importing oil from Russia, the world's third largest oil producer, by the way. So it seemed to me a good time to start drilling like the U.S. is the third monkey on the ramp of Noah's Ark, and brother, it's starting to rain. So the president can order an emergency sale of SPR, but there are some restrictions. For example, he can pump at a maximum rate of 4.4 million barrels per day for up to 90 days. Afterward, the rate declines to 3.8 million barrels per day for another 30 days. And finally, the rate drops again for up to 180 days until the stock is totally depleted. Frankly, I'm appalled that the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve is ever used as a political bargaining chip, especially when we have so much oil that can be refined for domestic and world consumption. Additionally, selling our oil like our farmland to our enemy China, someone help me understand the strategic interest in doing this by leaving your comments below. Okay, hope you were educated a bit on our Strategic Petroleum Reserve and our current status. If you liked the video, click the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell for notification of future videos. So until next time, make sure all your takeoff and landings equal.